G'day everyone. Today I'm joined by Benjamin Celemermajer and Kain Warwick from Synthetix. We're going to be running through how Synthetix is essentially, changing the game for modern DeFi heading into 2025. Lots of product updates, new mechanisms, trying to bring it back into the fold. I think I'll start with you, Ben, around what this new staking mechanism is for Synthetix, how it works, what it does, what it means for SNX in general heading into the remainder of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we're trying to do at the core is make staking simple and attractive again. I think in 2020, Synthetix really kicked off DeFi summer with this concept that was yield farming at the time, and it turned the SNX token into a really attractive token to hold and stake. And what it resulted in was Synthetix had industry leading staking rates. I think over 80% of tokens were staked at the time. And in recent years, we've just seen that kind of slip, and I think we're kind of around the 50% mark now. And so what we're trying to do is make staking simple and attractive again by moving from a system where the individual is the staker and the manager of this somewhat complex debt system that they have to partake in, to making the management of debt owned by the protocol. And so
Mm.
user turns up, deposits SNX, stakes it, and then in the back end, the protocol mints SUSD and manages the debt on their behalf.
I think that is something that like terrifies people with DeFi is just like sometimes the complexity of it. They can rip open a DeFi protocol and be like, ooh, don't know.
Mm.
Um, can you guys talk a little bit about Pool 420, apart from like a bit of I'm not sure if that was like a meme name intentionally or if that's just like the number that it landed on. I'm
So
assuming.
yeah, well, it's fun. Firstly, I just want to say it's quite the juxtaposition we have here in studio quality. While Ben and I are in the same building, he's down in the basement with no microphone and no lighting, and I've got a bunch of lights and an 8K camera here. So yeah, we gotta do some work on Synthetix to get him some better equipment. But the funny thing was, I turned up, and we have been writing Synthetix improvement proposals since 2019. So 6 years of SIPs, and we were up to like 414 or something. And I was like, well, this is a freebie. Like, I'm gonna choose SIP 420. And Caleb, the Synthetix Fund Police, was like, you can't do it out of sequence. And I was like, this is the one I want. I'm doing it. Sorry, like I'm not doing 414, you idiot. Like, I'm doing 420. Like, it's right there, right? Come on. So that was the kind of starting point of that, is that we were just so close to the SIP number that it was just such an easy,
As a
obvious
gimme.
meme. Yeah.
How does the Pool 420 side of things work? What does that look like? If I was going to take my SNX and I wanted to delegate it, what does it look like?
Yeah. So at the moment, the focus is on people with existing staking positions.
Mhm.
I'm sorry for your losses and mine. So the people who've had staking positions, especially people who've had staking positions for a long time, have incurred a lot of debt fluctuations, and the old argument that happened in the early days of Synthetix was, should we, and this goes back to even predates Synthetix, back to the Haven days, 2017, right? In the original mechanism design, we had many debates about whether or not it would be incentive compatible to allow people to mint themselves, right? And the original fear, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the people who was very concerned about this was Mike from Lyra/Derive, right? He was the guy that was like really concerned about this, which is honestly on brand, if you know him now. He's a bit of a conservative guy, and he was like, I'm really worried that people are just going to mint and then run away with the money. And like, this is a very exquisite mid-curve take, right? And like, I say that because you have a token that you like, presumably, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it. So you bought this token, and now you're minting debt against it. And the debt is maybe 20 or 25% of the value of the token, right? And so this idea that someone who has a token that they like and are so involved, they've staked it, they've minted, they've done all these, like they're highly engaged, right? That suddenly a switch flicks in their head after they've minted some stable coins and they're like, I'm out. Like, I'm just going to disappear with the money. It's just so dumb. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And the funny thing is that the real concern was if the price of the collateral went down, people would just like flee, right? The reality is that people don't. What actually happens, and we've seen this empirically over many years, is they cling on to this life raft of SNX for dear life until their like whole body is shutting down and they're like half dead and they're still holding on. They're like, please don't let me get liquidated, right? They don't walk away because they like the project, they like the token, and they're trying to find a way to salvage it. And so this fear that people had of if we let people stake themselves, that they will run away from the debt never actually eventuated, right? But the big problem here was because of that fear, we made a bunch of decisions around the parameterization of the protocol that were way too conservative, right? Like at one point we had a C ratio of like 800%, right? So you could mint, 10% of the value of your debt, which was incredibly capital inefficient. And so the compromise here was, okay, fine, people didn't run away from their debt and, you can let people solo stake and solo mint. But if there is so much conservatism around that you can't actually have a capital efficient system, let's remove that. We'll let the protocol stake because the protocol won't walk away from its debt. I'm sure there's some people who think like there's idiots everywhere, but we can be pretty confident the protocol's not going to walk away from its debt, right? So you have now a pool that can be much more capital efficient because it can mint to like 200%, right? And you can now mint more stable coins against the collateral, and you can take those stable coins, and again, we aren't in a ZERP environment anymore the way we were in 2017, 2018, 2019. There's interest all over the place. There are so many places where you can earn interest, right? And you can earn double-digit interest rates in a bunch of different places and have it be fairly diversified, and it can be even somewhat conservative. And so there's an opportunity to take this more capital-efficient system that is far lower risk and deploy the capital that's minted against this collateral to earn yield collectively, right? And then also collectively deploy it. And that's the other critical factor is, Synthetix needs a lot of capital. It's one of the reasons why we have this whole minting mechanism, this crypto collateralized stablecoin. It needs capital. It needs liquidity to be injected in certain places for things to work. This is where yield farming came from. And so if you have a giant pool of collateral and of liquidity that you can inject into places just in time at the right time for the right reasons, you can scale things up really quickly in a way that a bunch of independent people working based on market forces are not going to be able to coordinate as well, right? And so you have this kind of benevolent liquidity dictatorship that's like deploying capital wherever it needs to be just in time. And then you let the market come in and pull that liquidity out and do things with it. So that's the intention, and it's really just like a complete 180 on the original design of the system.
Okay. With the new staking mechanism, I know that you partnered with Athena to integrate the SUSDE. Man, there's so many stable coins now. I lose track of the SUS. It's all the little tickers. So you partnered with them, but you've got delegated staking. So the Synthetix treasury is going to be like kind of managing debt while the yield goes back to stakers. But there's also no liquidations. So stakers are no longer at risk of losing their collateral. Can you walk me through how that design works with this new pool?
Yeah, so the idea here, and again, this was not intended to fix liquidations. That's sort of a nice side effect. The intent was to improve the capital efficiency. That was the primary motivator. But the reason why you have liquidations in a crypto collateralized stablecoin is for that reason that people could walk away. So you need to liquidate their collateral, bring it back, and either distribute it to other people or let them sell it off, or there has to be a process to ensure that you don't have bad debt in the system. But when it's all in a single pool, the bad debt is sort of socialized, right? And so you have a system where an individual staking position, you don't have debt yourself. The protocol does, right? So you can't walk away from that position. The collateral value can drop. If the collateral value drops, the protocol owns enough stablecoins that are out yield farming that it can then go and just buy back on market the stablecoins that it issued to collect that yield. And so you have a much more efficient mechanism where the protocol will always backstop and be the buyer of last resort of the stablecoin because it has other stablecoins that it's sold them for that are earning yield. And, it's accumulating yield and getting, larger treasury. And it's a very kind of elegant and efficient design that only works if you have 8 years of Lindy. Like you couldn't really turn up and be like, hello world, what do you think about this? Like, Tom USD probably wouldn't work out as well, right? And I mean, you can try it. Like, I'm happy to help you write the white paper. Like, I'm here for it. But there's a lot of Toms there. Like, maybe you guys have your own network.
We'll have our own pool.
Yeah, exactly. All the Toms in a single pool. But it would be much harder to scale. Whereas SUSD, I was looking the other day, Go, the Aave stablecoin, only has like 80 million USD. It's not that impressive. Like, I think SUSD is like around 70, 80, 90 million, right? And they've been working on this for a year. We've been trying to ignore our stable coin and it's still sitting like they've been throwing everything at it and we're just like stumbling around and have like 100 mil of stable coins. So if we put some effort into it, I think we can scale this. And again, Synthetix just has enough Lindy that you can get away with this in a way that a novel, new, nascent mechanism wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, okay. So bearish Tom USD. We're not going to try it.
Neutral on Tom. We're not. It's a don't buy on Tom USD.
I'll get a delta neutral strat on the Tom USD for in the next 6 months.
Nice.
Ben, I had a question for you around the governance overturn that happened around about like 6 months ago.
Overthrow? Are we saying overthrow? Overturn? Overthrow?
Overthrow.
Coup?
I don't know. Coup. Way better. Way better. The coup. Let's talk about that. What happened there, and how have things been going since?
Yeah, so that was kind of in discussion with Kain and a few other large token holders. It was kind of a recognition that something had to happen at Synthetix, and one of the kind of core, I guess, inefficiencies that we identified was that this kind of four-council model that had existed for several years, whilst it started with good intentions and may have set off on the right track, over time you incrept inefficiency and incrept different councillors with different objectives, and the high turnover meant that the CCs were kind of led in different directions, and ultimately no one was responsible for the outcome, especially on these kind of 4-month election cycles whereby people would just disappear if they wanted, or there was new churn, and everyone would kind of come and just point fingers at each other and say, it's their fault, it's my fault, it's so-and-so's fault, it's the Treasury Council's fault, or the ambassador's fault.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and my recollection of this might be a little bit hazy, but our grants council went something like 18 months without actually deploying a grant. And they were just, is that right? Was it 18 months?
I think Igor would be better positioned because he was the one that came in and was like, I'm killing this. But it was something like that. Like it just sat there collecting money and did nothing.
It just kept getting more money and never deployed. And like people were like, how many grants have you guys given out? And they're like, oh no, we don't. We get the money, we don't give it out.
So the kind of idea was to consolidate that all into one streamlined council that had all the stakeholders at the table and ultimately is responsible for the direction and outcomes of the protocol. So that's where that landed, and I think it's led to a lot of efficiency since it's happened. It's led to a lot of outcomes. We were quickly able to kind of turn and acquire Quenta and TLX and bring them back into the Synthetix into the Synthetix tent and operationalize those pretty quick. SIP 420 came out of that council as well. Having Kain and Jordan as part of the council as well as true synthetic OGs, and getting them back in the fold in terms of like contributing and providing the historical context has been super critical to to kind of what we've done thus far and where we've got to as well. So it's really having this tight-knit group has been a great outcome, I think, for the protocol.
I'm going to ask some like more abstract questions in a second around like, synthetics, modern DeFi, the entire thing. But before that, I do want to get into some upcoming stuff that you guys have as well. So I've been told about V4, Vaults, and Synthetic Exchange. Let's run through those.
So yeah, I mean, Synthetix, as we mentioned, kind of coming in October last year, it was a bit of a stock take, and I think it's hard to fully comprehend the state of things from the outside. Even having been like tangentially around for 7 years, until I was really inside, it was hard to comprehend where things were. And so once we kind of landed in Synthetix, it was this recognition that, okay, there's opportunity here, there are parts that are missing, and that's ultimately what led to this idea behind V4. It was Synthetix had innovated with V2 perps, V3 perps came along and kind of missed the beat a little in terms of like where the trade-offs between decentralization and centralization were, and not having an order book, I think, was something that was a decision that was made at the time that wasn't necessarily adjusted quick enough when competitors like Hyperliquid came out and started getting real traction. And so the idea behind V4 is twofold. One, it's to launch ultimately on our own app chain, which is Snaxchain, that exists much to many people's disbelief. I think launched in August last year. I still don't think our official Twitter's ever said anything about Snaxchain. So it's
We'll plug it. I'll include it. And we'll slam some Snaxchain shilling in
Yeah, we
the
need to get
release
some
of this.
Snaxchain ads going on NGMI.
I'll get a banner just
rolling through.
blast it up for 10 seconds here at this point. Just
Nice.
go.
Snaxchain, go.
Brought to you by Snaxchain. Bam. Yeah, sorry.
So launch a hopefully much more performant derivatives exchange up on Snaxchain with order book compatibility. And then off the back of that, we kind of got thinking and looking at what our ecosystem participants were building on top of Synthetix. And when we said, okay, we want to bring a lot of this in-house, the acquisition of TLX was one of the recognitions around, okay, you can build products on top of derivatives protocols that make it much more easy for laymen, or for I guess retail, or even just a different type of user to engage in derivatives product strategies without actually turning up and trading on an exchange. And so that's where, I mean, if you look at Athena, that's at a very simplistic level, all they've done is productize the basis trade. Many people wouldn't know how to do it. They wouldn't turn up and buy a spot and put it on Binance and use it as margin to short the perp and capture the funding rate. But by productizing it, Athena have been able to get 5 to 6 billion TVL. And so the idea behind productizing different types of strategies, be it leverage strategies, delta neutral strategies, is something that complements the exchange and has downstream impacts like more liquidity, more open interest, which create a better trade experience, but also just attract a different type of audience that doesn't want to turn up and trade. And so that's the idea behind those type of products.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is a very good point about Athena. Like, I feel like everyone was very confused when they launched. It was that, where's the yield coming from? But once people kind of like got stuck into it, it was like, oh shit, yeah, they've literally just made a like asset based on like a set of actions that you could take. But 99% of people aren't doing that on the reg for however like 12-15% of yield. In your SNX Renaissance blog post, Ken, you talk about modern DeFi. I think that's a very, very good topic to get into. I think DeFi is kind of, I would just say, like, at least as a market theme, has, I would say, fallen off a little bit. Everyone this cycle has been degenning on meme coins. I think that I'm not even going to say respect, it's a bit too holier than thou of me, but like the appreciation for the DeFi roots of crypto have kind of faded out. What needs to happen for DeFi to kind of make a comeback into the fore?
The grand irony there, I think, right, is like meme coins run on DeFi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they just run on DeFi. Like if you don't have DeFi, there's no meme coins. You need like bonding curves, you need AMMs, you need like execution engines, you need like there's all these things that you can't do without DeFi. Like meme coins are one of them, right? So on some level, the fact that people are talking about meme coins and not talking about the fact that DeFi enables them, right? Although maybe this could be bearish if people find out that actually DeFi is responsible for meme coins as well, right? We start to get blamed for it. But
Pump.fun is the DeFi protocol. That's
yeah,
it.
Pump.fun's actually DeFi, guys. That's the real problem.
That's the takeaway.
That's the takeaway. So you have this thing that is so good, so efficient, so well orchestrated now that you don't even notice that it's there. Like you don't need to talk about it as a thing because it's just there, right? Everyone's LPing, they can put into concentrated pools. There's Launchpad. There's all of these different AMM designs on Solana, on Base, on Arbitrum, etc. And it just works, and it's the financial plumbing for people to do things on. Now, people don't like what they're doing. That's a different problem, right? But the plumbing works, and you can do things. So when I talk about modern DeFi, I mean this suite of platforms and protocols that exist today that have Lindy that do everything that was advertised, are really robust, haven't been hacked or taken down or had outages for years and years, support like 5, 10, 20, $50 billion worth of TVL across all these different platforms, across different networks, bridges, etc. Like all of that DeFi infrastructure that just works. That's modern DeFi, right? And we saw you can build meme coins on top of it. You can build SocialFi on top of it. SocialFi also requires DeFi. Like all of these things require the financial plumbing of DeFi. And so I think that there is like a lot of room for new things to emerge and be built, whether it's applications like for end users or new primitives or new casino games on top of DeFi, and it just all works. And so the question then is, if all of this stuff is working now in a way that a lot of people said it wouldn't ever work, right? Then are we ready to actually cross the chasm and start to really provide some of the financial plumbing for things that are in TradFi? And we're starting to see whispers and glimmers of that, right? Coinbase talking about potentially tokenizing coin on the Base network. Where's that going to trade? It's going to trade on Aerodrome.
Yeah.
Like it's going to trade on Aerodrome. It's going to trade on like the major AMMs on Base. Maybe it gets migrated to Solana and it's trading on Jupiter. But all of a sudden you have a tokenized equity of a multi-billion-dollar company that's listed on one of the U.S. stock exchanges, trading in DeFi 24/7. And I think that like we will find that DeFi eats that up and doesn't even flinch. And this is where, the investment in infrastructure that came from the meme coin madness, right? This efficiency that we got. Now, that includes Base and Solana, both of which seriously benefited from improvements that came from the demand from just meme coin activity, right? And so now you can literally tokenize a multi-billion-dollar equity and have it trade 24/7, and it won't even touch the sides. There's so much capacity, so much bandwidth. So that to me is what that kind of underlying investment in the infrastructure gets you, is that you can just then enable new services. And that's modern DeFi. It's this thing you don't even need to talk about, it just works.
How do you reconcile, because this is something that I think people saw with, I'll use AI as an example of, you had like your base layer, ChatGPT, the LLM itself, and everyone kind of shat on the wrappers and was like, oh, bloody stupid ChatGPT wrappers. But they're the things that accrue value. It's like these little merchants on the end that actually accrue the value. Meanwhile, the base system, it's arguable that you'd want to, if you could tokenize, we're going to tokenize the ChatGPT LLM, you would have less upside. We've also seen it, to a broader scale with ETH as well, this cycle of like, you've got all the layer twos. I'm not sure how much value is accruing to them either, but there's almost this skepticism of owning the governance token of the thing that does all the stuff from the market at the moment. I feel like that's almost a bit of a meme of like, oh, the governance token. What do you think could shift the incentives towards owning the governance token of the thing that does all of the stuff?
I think there's two elements to this. One is, where does the attention accrue? right? And so, where the attention accrues, as we saw with meme coins, is often where liquidity flows. And that's where there's going to be money to be made. But then there is what is the underlying layer that actually enables the attention to even accrue or be traded or whatever. And if that thing is generating fees, whether you know about it or not, it will accrue value, right? If it's generating fees and it's generating revenue, it will accrue value. We saw this with Pump.Fun. You didn't need to know, Pump.Fun was an app, right? But underneath it was a bunch of DeFi infrastructure, bonding curves, et cetera, and AMM launch pads and all these different things. But it accrued hundreds of millions of dollars worth of value, right? Now, was the attention on Pump.Fun itself or on the actual meme coins that were being launched? Kind of both, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, where the value accrued was to the thing that enabled all of that whole attention game, right? It didn't really accrue to the meme coins as much as it did the platform, the plumbing.
Yeah, the Pump.Fun, the tweets of those guys, they've withdrawn this much. I'm actually my hottest take is that I'm actually quite partial to the Pump.Fun side of things, but we'll leave that for
Okay.
another
Okay.
debate. That's my hot take from this cycle. Very unpopular to come in and defend Pump.Fun, but I'm like,
Pump.Fun, the quiet heroes of this cycle. I'll
yeah,
take,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
The
I'll
true
take
the
the
true
negative on
benevolent
that one.
dictators. They
Yeah,
really had our best interests at heart.
yeah.
Okay, what does the 2025 roadmap look like for Synthetix? Like, what's the plan for domination heading into the rest of this year?
Yeah, I think it's. I think we're set off on an interesting foot. I think this concept of SIP 420 has really created a new product for Synthetix, which I think we're only scratching the surface on where it can take us. And so I think, whilst I mentioned before, we're kind of moving everything to Snaxchain. I think that will be the home of Synthetix in the future. That's where our exchange will live. That's where our vaults will live. That's where our products will live. I think on those side of things, we're pretty clear on what the execution and the roadmap has to look like there in terms of what the trader experience has to be, how competitive it has to be relative to others, what vaults have to return, how they have to operate, how they have to structure, who you have to integrate with, all of those things. And so I think it's really from that side of things about execution. I think where there's a lot of imagination that is going to come from Synthetix is going to be on the SIP 420 side of things, where it's okay, once we have this vault up and running, what are the opportunities that can bring to us? Once you start generating yield, what can you do with that yield? Once you have enough SNX capture, where can you take that? What can you do with that? Where can you position that? And so I think we're kind of at this interesting precipice for Synthetix staking once again, like it was probably in 2020, whereby we're launching version 1 of this staking, and I think the opportunities that can come off the back of it, we're kind of teasing on whiteboards at the minute and coming up with some cool ideas. But I think they're kind of the two streams for me. It's the product stream, which is very much about creating an exceptional product and an exceptional trading experience, and then getting that front and center where we can. And then once we fix the staking module for Synthetix, where can we take that and how can we proliferate that amongst the kind of broader DeFi ecosystem?
There's also a lot of cleanup, unfortunately. The house we're living in is somewhat of a hovel. Each room has like rats living in the mattresses and stuff. So there's a lot of work to just kind of clean up some of the stuff that's accumulated over the last few years. There's old deployments, legacy code running on random chains in all kinds of places. So there's a bit of work to just kind of constrain the surface area. One of the things is like Synthetix became really unwieldy to manage. Manage the context, manage the code, manage all of these things. I think Snaxchain will be a shelling point for Synthetix to focus on, where it's like, now it's not a decision of like, do we put this on Blast? Do we put it on Arbitrum? Do we put it on Optimism? We've got this new feature. Which one of the chains do we roll it out? It'll now just be like, Put it on Snaxchain, bro. Just put the feature on Snaxchain. Easy, right?
We were, I don't think many know this, we were this close to having deployments on 5 chains towards the end of last year.
And again, like
Ooh.
I put my hand up and say I was responsible for that. Like that whole arc of like be everywhere, the full court press. We resisted it for a long time, and then I sort of capitulated. I saw what Aave was doing. I saw what Uniswap were doing, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I got this wrong. And I think that we were right to focus on a single chain. Unfortunately, we just focused on the wrong chain. Optimism was the wrong chain to focus on. It was the only-ish option. Like you really only had Optimism or Arbitrum at the time. In hindsight, Arbitrum did a much better job of courting DeFi. And then once Base emerged, we probably could have full pivoted and just leaned all in on Base, and we didn't. We sort of hedged our bets and did like a little bit of Base, a little bit of Optimism, but then we're also on Arbitrum. I think at the end of the day, picking a single chain and focusing on it, was the right call. And I still think the super chain is the right place to be. The right L2 ecosystem. I think Optimism has done a great job of building an ecosystem of chains. Optimism mainnet, less so, right? Which is kind of interesting when you think about it. Like one is a go-to-market sort of BD and marketing process in terms of getting attention for a chain that I think they did really poorly on. The other is like a technical exercise of like building the most performant interop chain ecosystem that everyone will want to use because it's just the best. And I think they crushed that, right? So it speaks to their strengths for sure. And now the nice thing is they get to kind of defer the marketing exercise to each of the individual chains. Jesse and Base do a far better job of, advocating for the superchain ecosystem than Optimism could ever do for a whole bunch of reasons, right? And so now they get to focus on their core competency, which is building, the most performant chain and dealing with interop and all of these cool things. And same thing for Snaxchain. We get to inherit all of that amazing tech, but we also get to focus on our own go-to-market and make sure that our chain actually has the most traction that we can get.
That's a very good kind of takeaway from, I think that the liquidity fragmentation thing became a bit of a meme of like, oh, deploy everything on 7 fucking chains. And then people were just like, I did.
7? Those are rookie numbers. Gotta back those up.
Yeah. How many L2s are there now? We'll put them on all of them.
A billion.
Like 100 and just too many L2s.
Where I go to see how many chains there are is Gas Zip. That's like my favorite place. It's hilarious because I haven't been on there a few weeks, so I don't know if they've changed the way that they structure this. But if you go Gas Zip, there's just a drop down, and it just goes forever. And you're like,
I'm scrolling
I've never
now.
heard of some of these chains. Like a lot of them are just farming chains, but I'm a big fan of that project. The founders.
Okay. Holy shit, I usually use like L2 beat, but it doesn't show it in this kind of way where you can just...
You think you're deep in chains, and then Gas Zip is like, nah, bro, you're not even close.
I'm looking and I'm like, I don't even know.
He's still scrolling. He's still scrolling, people.
Holy shit. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple L2s.
Yeah.
But I think Vitalik's done like a decent job of like addressing that fragmentation issue in the last few months as well. Because I feel like it was rejected for a long time of like, no, there's not. Fuck off. There's no liquidity fragmentation. And then I was like, all right, maybe there's a little bit. I got to have OP gas for this shit, and then I got to bridge over here and then use this, and then bit nightmarish. How does Synthetix fit in with Infinex now? Because I know that Infinex was originally dreamt up. Like in the early days, you were like, oh, it's a DeFi front end plugin kind of thing, and you're gonna have like the UX kind of mullet of like the good stuff in the front, plumbing in the back. How does the Synthetix side work with Infinex now? And I'd like to hear a little bit more about like the process by which you were like, oh, actually, let's make a like front end for everything instead of just perps.
Yeah, you can't see it, but off camera, there's someone pointing a gun at me right now to make sure that I don't leak any alpha. There's so much alpha that I could leak right now, and I'm just like having to hold it in. there's almost nothing I can say without accidentally leaking some alpha here, so I'm gonna try and avoid it. I'll answer the second question, which was, we started out with this idea of let's build a centralized wrapper for this on-chain perps engine, which again was I think directionally correct, because it's not too dissimilar to what Hyperliquid did, because the idea was that if you have a very performant engine, but it's built on DApp rails, it's going to be high latency and not very performant. And so if you build a centralized wrapper around it, you can be much faster. The challenge is that we were probably just a little too early on that from like an L2 perspective, right? So I think that we're going to have a chain like Mega ETH where you can actually have enough throughput that a centralized wrapper around a engine that's running on Mega ETH would be extremely performant, right? Would be able to compete with Hyperliquid, and could arguably make a case for is more decentralized. Not that anyone cares, but you could make that case, right? And so I do think that that kind of realization as we were building it, that while it was a good approach, it was maybe not going to actually get the result that we wanted. And then this realization that we could do so much more with an app that was running on-chain rails. There's so much more to do than just have a perps engine. And so we leaned into that, and now we've got this cross-chain swapping system called Swidge, which allows you to do both swaps and bridges. And we're rolling out a bunch of other features. But one of the features that I'm excited for is this new staking pool. Because we're in the process of redesigning our earn page. So one of our first partners on the Infinex side was Athena as well. Coincidentally, I don't know where the common thread is on both of those partnerships, but anyway, so we had a really good partnership with Athena from the start, where we could earn both Sats and yield by holding USDE, and we've just redesigned all of that. And so we're going to roll out a bunch of new yield opportunities, including this 420 pool. So that's something that I'm very excited about. Obviously, it's not perps yet. We're not ready for that yet. We're starting, swapping, bridging, yield farming, airdrops, and then we'll slowly get to spot and perps. But yeah, that's the probably immediate integration that I'm excited about.
I do like the idea of there being like an earn page where I can literally just go and then click a little button and then have all the yield shit be there, rather
Well,
than
here's the
like
crazy thing.
typing in each protocol and being like, is this the right one? Am I going to deposit like 20K to something and
Yeah.
then is this a fake margin fi? Oh fuck.
Honestly, this is
Not that
gonna
I
blow
would use margin fi
not
anymore, but anyway.
well, so this is going to blow your mind, right? Because like one of the things that we've realized is that there are sort of three components to almost any on-chain process, right? As a user, you have the discovery component, right? You need to discover that something exists, right? And then through discovery, you get an intent or a desire or a need or a want, however you want to describe it, right? But until you know the thing exists, you can't decide whether or not you want to do it. Right? So you just have discovery, and then you go, oh, I want to do that, right? Now, in crypto, typically, discovery is easy. You go on crypto Twitter, and you get a fire hose of discovery options, right? People are discovering shit in your face all over the place, shilling you things left and right. Like, you can't get away from discovery, right? Like,
I'm covered and discovered.
Yeah, you're like, discover. It's just like a constant stream of discovery, right? So discovery is not our problem. Clearly, we've overdone discovery. Out of that, you go, maybe I want to do Maker. Like, a bunch of people are, kind of shilling me that, and it sounds cool, and so, there's this new thing, and like they're OG, and it's probably safe, so I want to do Maker, okay? And so you go from discovery to intent. I want to put some of my money into Maker. Then this is where the nightmare begins, right? discovery easy, intent fairly easy. Like you do a bit of research, cool. Now you have a fucking nightmare on your hands because you don't know where the maker pools are. Are they on mainnet? Are they on Arbitrum? Are they on Optimism? Are they on their own chain? You don't know what assets necessarily they will accept. You don't even know how to get your assets onto the chain that they're there. And so now you've got this orchestration problem, which is all on the user. Every single step you need to go and research and figure out, okay, I need this asset, I'm on this chain, I need gas for this, whatever. If you solve the orchestration problem, then discovery and intent can be combined so easily. And so on this yield page, you'll go to the yield page and there'll be a bunch of yield opportunities that will have an APY and, you know, some indication of like risk based on TVL, longevity of the pool, you know, some key factors that help you assess the opportunity, right? And again, you need to do the research and make your call, right? But once you go from discovery to intent, you click a button, it happens.
Yep.
And if you then go to the next one, you go, well, actually, Maker sounded really cool, but this Pendle thing looks even cooler. It's got like 25% APY and, you know, there's $1 billion worth of TVL. Just click that button. Now you're in that one. Whereas if you went from Maker to Pendle in a normal, like it's an hour of work and you're probably just gonna be like, it's not worth it, right? So it's the orchestration that's the hard part of this. And if you solve orchestration, which Infinex has for some categories of things, like really solved it. We've removed the gas, the chains, the tokens, everything. You just have an intent and we orchestrate it for you and we give you a good fill and we don't charge you fees. Once you solve that orchestration thing, everything else falls into place. It just becomes so easy. The problem is orchestration is the hard part, right? And it took, you know, a long time for us to really dial in exactly how to orchestrate things, because orchestration is not just do the transaction, it's understand what the transaction's doing, make sure that you have reviewed the code and the ABIs, make sure that you have the right contracts, the right pools, the right assets, all of that stuff, and then make sure that the user has the right posture in terms of their security, that their security around their private keys and all of, like, the orchestration goes all the way through this thing, from security all the way through to the action. That's the hard part. And if you can orchestrate all of that, make it safe, easy, simple, gasless, chainless, tokenless, then it just falls into place.
Yep. No, that's I've literally done the Maker to Pendle pipeline at the start of 2023 was when I started like dabbling around with it and was like, ooh.
My favorite one ever was taking Ohm. So I had Ohm, not wrapped Ohm, just Ohm, right? And Tyler, who you may have heard of, turned up in my DMs and was like, bro, you got to do something. And he was like, you got to do this thing, some MIM based thing. And I was literally there for like 4 hours. I was like, what have you asked me to do? And it was like, you got to wrap the Ohm and then you got to send the Ohm to this chain and then you got to put it into MIM and then you got to borrow against the MIM and then you got to put it into the Fiat DAO and then from Fiat DAO you got to stake it, but there's a 28-day cooldown. It was just like, and gas on each one and bridging and find the right bridge, and D-bridge doesn't work on that one, you got to go to start. It was insane. 4 hours of that, right? Now, cut to 3 years later, it's just press the button. And it all comes together.
I'm a big fan of press the button.
Press the button.
That's not an uncommon story. It's like all over the place. It's having that experience is part of just being in crypto that I think so many people have become numb to, just being like, I just got to do the work. It's a wild mindset.
Yeah, I've just got to bridge 6 times. That's it, and pay gas on each one.
It's not much, but it's honest work.
And you kind of trick yourself into being like, well, if this is this difficult, surely I have an edge here. And
this
then you're
is
like,
the alpha.
yeah. You're like, fuck, man, this has got to have a huge payoff. And then you get it to the other end, and it's like 17% APY, and you're like, yeah. Anyway, respectful of your time. I mean, a quick pod's a good pod. I want to finish up with some things that people can do with SNX now, or anything in the SNX ecosystem. You know, if people listening, they want to either, take their SNX that they have in there now, or they want to get into the eco. What are some things that people can do with SUSD or SNX? Anything else? Snaxchain as well. Go Snaxchain.
Go
Brought to you
Snaxchain.
by Snaxchain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the immediate action is I want to say 4 hours, we're going to launch the 420 pool publicly. So any current staker that does have a debt position will be able to migrate into the 420 pool and start having their debt repaid over a 12-month period. So like in terms of current stakers, there's an immediate action. If someone holds SNX or has staked it and doesn't have debt, or is looking at SNX as an opportunity, there is a phase coming in a couple of weeks that will be for them, that will be less about debt burden and more about other incentives that kind of create the story for them as to why they should partake in the 420 pool. That's the SNX side of things. The SUSD side of things, we've got some cool opportunities at the minute. We've partnered with Infinex. If you hold SUSD on Infinex, there are weekly rewards. So there's like a baseline APR. And then on top of that, there's a few winners that we draw every week that have the chance to win a patron, some ETH or some SNX. So that's something to do with SUSD. The other thing is we've recently launched a few pools on Curve. So an SUSDE versus SUSD pool and a USDE versus an SUSD pool that have some quite attractive yields in these early stages as we ramp them up and scale them up. And so there's some good opportunities to get into the ecosystem. On a product side of things, the leverage tokens we've recently relaunched on Base. We've got some good yield opportunities for Base LPs of our exchange, or a derivatives exchange. Trading opportunities as always for those that want to turn up, and then I think, as we talked about kind of at the top of the hour, hopefully a few new product updates coming in the coming months that will make the experience a lot better, all on Snaxchain.
All on Snaxchain.
Does Snaxchain have a handle? I didn't want to look it up while we're. Is there a Snaxchain Twitter?
I love that you're asking this live. Does it have Twitter?
I'm starting one. I'm gonna go and register one.
Yeah.
Surely. There's good memes that can come out of that. It's got a very good snacks. There's a lot of potential there. It's got a lot of marketing upside on that alone. So looking like a snacks.
Snaxchain.
There we go.
There you go.
If there's anything else pressing that you wanted to chuck in on the end here, if not, I'll run the outro.
The brought to you by Snaxchain outro, presumably.
The brought to you by Snaxchain outro, of course.
Banner and everything.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing.
Well,
amazing.
I would look for it on Twitter, but I'm not sure if there's a handle.
We'll fix that. Don't worry.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on the show. People want to stay updated with Synthetix. I'm sure you'll probably repost this or something from Synthetix as well. But if people do want to keep updated with Synthetix, Infinex, where would they find it on socials?
Mainly Twitter. Synthetix_IO for Synthetix. Infinex_app for Infinex. And then my handle is KAIYNNE. I don't
Awesome.
know if Ben has a Twitter. Do you have a Twitter?
Yeah,
I assume you
Ben's
do.
got a Twitter.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Ben's handle. What is it? Ben, shout out your handle. Go for it.
Celermajer B.
Okay. Awesome,
Wrong way
man.
around. Went the wrong way around on that one. Benny C.
Easy.
Benny C.
Benny C.
Update it.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your
All
time.
right, guys. Mate,
Thanks, mate.
thank you so much.